and welcome to Not inShawScope, where I am not Clive Davis, he is not
Darren Jones,
and he certainly is not
Nick.
No. So this is
that like share?
Yes. I've decided.
So it's like you're
Nick.
Nick. You're just Nick.
Just yeah. You know, if you don't know who is being spoken of when you hear Nick, then you're just not with it.
It's actually
You're
share in this.
Just not. Yes.
It's Cher doing her famous dodgy Irish accent.
Yes. Yeah. You probably remember from various episodes of Sonny and Cher.
Yeah, she does it in Moonlighting, I believe, at one point. Anyway, nice to have you on the show, Cher.
Glad to be here.
And so
we got you, babe.
Very good. So this is our sister or brother incestuous podcast going alongside our ShawScope one. And,
I think this time we should be our little green snake sister, right? To the white snake that is our
stop talking about your little green snake, Nick. We've heard quite enough about that.
Yeah.
All right.
And we keep telling you to see a doctor about it, and you don't go.
No, it's not supposed to be. I mean, the size you can't do anything about, but the color you maybe can.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll make an appointment.
You really do walk into these things, don't you, Nick? So anyway, recently over at ShawScope, we've been talking about some adaptations of Madam Whitesnake, specifically the 1956 and the 1962 ones coming as they did from Shaw. So of course we talk about them on ShawScope. But in the interim came another couple of non-Shaws from other parts of the world. And after we talk about them, we'll be jumping forward to 1975 to talk another Taiwanese adaptation, Snake Woman's Marriage. But for the time being, we're going to talk, well, first, we're going to talk some early anime. In fact, we're talking the first color, first widescreen theatrical Japanese animated feature from 1958.
On our Chinese cinema podcast, yes.
Yes. But even though, you know, in our Shaw, we talked about the 56 Madam Whitesnake or Legend of Whitesnake, but is all in Japanese.
Which is equally Japanese, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is PANDA and the Magic Serpent, or White Snake Enchantress. Apparently, this was a very big influence on a young Hayao Miyazaki who saw it.
I'm not surprised. I think it's in my notes. I said that this has to have been digested by Miyazaki. But possibly also the makers of Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
There's a big panda fight in this, isn't there?
Yep.
So I don't think we're going to go over to encourage you to listen to more of our bollocks. If you actually want to know more about Madam Whitesnake, you should go and listen to inShawScope episode, whatever the fuck it is, 11, I think, or something like that, right? In which Darren does a very good job of letting us know all about what the kind of template is. So yeah, go listen to that, because we're not gonna go over that again.
No, that took far too long.
So
it's a detailed story. Lots happens.
Oh, hang on. I haven't used my echo in this podcast yet.
Okay, is that going to be?
That took far too long.
There we go. That's it.
That's the only one. That's the only time I'm doing it. But
okay. No.
You know,
I have one in every show.
Yeah. Hang on. One more. Bumhole. Bumhole. Bum. hole.
So as you can tell, we're a very serious-minded podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably be put on university syllabi any minute now, I think.
Yeah.
So
yes,
It's like
first...
tuning into the Open University, isn't it?
it's a lot like that. Yeah.
Yes.
We're just
That is
missing
how
the flares and the tweed.
That's how I learned where babies came from. Was home from school. Yes, that's exactly as is my understanding from having watched Open University channel as a child. Yeah, that's what I learned.
As long as you know you're pregnant, and then you put a net in your toilet where you normally wouldn't have one, so you catch the baby so it doesn't get flushed away like a turd.
Yes. All right, let's get back to
It comes out of your bum hole.
So much like Green Snake, who is, apparently 500 years younger actually than her older and more evolved sister, this definitely is the podcast that goes off the rails almost from the very beginning every time. I feel
because it's the second one we do.
Yes,
Darren's had a skin full.
This is true. So yeah,
that is true. The only difference this time is I've got echo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Who gave him that?
We gave him a toy.
Darren echo.
Yes.
That's like giving him fireworks. Don't do that. Right.
There's
a fucking animated version of White Snake. It's called PANDA the White Serpent. And it was made in 1958. It's directed by Taiji Yabushita. And Hayao Miyazaki really liked it. Right.
Yes. Toy animation, I believe.
Yeah, okay. We might want to say a little bit more. Oh, yeah, and it's got a panda in it and a fox.
Yep, mustache fox and slightly depressed-looking panda.
And some pigs
Panda and Mimi.
Yeah.
Yep.
Some pigs straight out of Animal Farm.
Yes. Particularly Monobrow Pig, who's my favorite of all.
It's really like the animated version, the 54 one. To the point
it is a bit weird.
Be a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
The interestingly CIA-backed animated version of Animal Farm, right? Apparently.
Right.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why would the CIA back a version of Animal Farm?
They were also big boosters of 1984. They saw it as exclusively. They didn't get that it was bigger than communism.
Sorry, I forgot they didn't understand irony. Sorry.
And that too, yes.
Sorry.
Hang on now. Did I know what happened? We said CIA, but Darren heard wholesale retailer CNA and was wondering what they had to do with the fight.
Back in George Orwell adaptations, yeah.
Man at FBI.
Yes. But of course, later on, George Orwell did his great unfinished novel about Marks and Spencers as well. So there's a
Marxist Spencers.
Marxist Spencer. I like it.
Marxist Spencer.
Not quite Stalinist. When you want clothes that are not too communist, that don't cause starvation, go to Marxist Spencer.
Yeah. Blood in the food hall.
I always eat the Trotsky fried chicken as well. Right.
All right.
Very good.
Anyway.
Very good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
Because this fucking I give up.
Just go through the plot immediately.
It's the same. It's the same thing as always.
Okay, hang on. So
I'll
say a few things. Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Right.
So this opens up actually with quite beautiful Sumi ink paintings of kind of mountains and stuff, very, very ancient Japanesey looking things. And then we get slammed into this, I think, gorgeous set of what looks like fully painted like children's book from the 50s illustrations that are slightly animated, telling us the story of the very young White Snake and the very young, I don't know what his name is in this version, but it's always some version of that sounds a bit the same, right?
Right. See what he's done there? He's made reference to Sumi ink paintings and fine art, right? And what you did was you turned your ego on and said bumhole. It's a
Bumhole.
totally different approach to the same
material. Yes. So yes, and there's quite a beautiful little song that plays out here that tells the story of how, as a young child, you know, our male hero found the snake, and everyone hates the snake because people hate snakes. People are very judgmental that way. And he goes, no, you know, this is a beautiful snake, and he protects the snake, and you know, he acts out of love rather than hate. And so they develop this bond, and then this section ends, and then we get slammed into a proper kind of more Disney looking animation. It's interesting at this point that the kind of what we think of when we think of anime, the big eyes and the rest of it, is still hasn't really established itself yet, right? That is more of a post Tezuka thing, right? So you know, we get what really does look like, you know, it could be almost a Disney film, especially with the little animal sidekicks, and almost a Disney film made like 20 or 30 years later. I feel then like this is really quite ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think the animation isn't necessarily ahead of its time, although it's good. It's well animated.
That's fantastic.
But although, but I think I couldn't stop thinking Disney throughout this whole thing.
Yeah,
you know, with all the animal characters and all the kind of the side animal shenanigans. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
But I
suppose my notes do say more animal malarkey quite often when we cut away from our main story.
In 1958, being reminded of Disney wouldn't necessarily have some of the connotations it would have now, right? Like it would be a much classier sort of. This reminds me of Disney, you know, because it wouldn't be, you know, it's pre-Disney as, you know, theme park, behemoth kind of taking over conglomerations.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking Bambi and Snow White and Fantasia, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so it's worth saying straight up as well that before we get into the detail as well, that this is actually quite charming, quite lovely, and you shouldn't be put off when we say that there's a panda and a fox in it. That's, you know, because that's, oh, for fuck's sake. But actually, it is all quite sweet and lovely and charming, and I didn't have a problem with the panda and the fox at all. Did either of you have a problem with the panda and the fox?
No, not really. No.
They're very much aimed at children, but that's fine. It's not. It's child appropriate. It's not childish.
No.
Yes, because it doesn't water down that central kind of idea of love is absolute, and love recognizes no boundaries and limits and all that stuff, which I think we'll talk about when we get to the end of this whole thing.
I think it's less complicated, isn't it? So it's less complicated than the other stories, but that's because it's aimed at children. So there's there's no real need for nuance, you know. Even
though it does bring in more elements that aren't actually in the other version.
Yeah,
it's like, in a way it's more contrived, but I know what you mean. It's morally more black and white, isn't it?
Yeah, and it also kind of strips away characters as well. So the Taoist priest is now, you know, the Taoist priest and the Buddhist priest, you know, from Fahan Mountain are now one character.
Amalgamated them, yeah,
exactly. So and you know, in that way, it's simplified as well.
No one poisons the water table to get rich as well.
Yeah, there are no Timothy Learys in this version.
Yes, and then there's and then one other major difference is this is the only version that has Green Snake is not a snake at all. She's a fish.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
But that kind of works at the end as well, because it makes more sense that she's a fish.
Yes, in that big
watery things.
She's lovely. Yeah. She was my favorite.
Yeah, she's cute. She just walks around like this, going all the time. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what else to say except that I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I watched.
You're allowed to say that. So you have to find something else.
Oh yes, you're right. Shoot.
Yeah.
Sorry. I enjoyed it very much. I had a good time with it. My wife really liked it as well.
Right.
And
She's
there's
allowed.
a great part.
You can get her, you can drag her on, and she can say, "I thoroughly enjoyed it." Instead of you.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
I'll make a recording of that. I can just play it.
Yeah.
I tried to get my wife to watch one of the previous films, the Linda Lindai one. I thought, I've got to introduce you to Linda Lindai because you like it. I promise you, you like it. She was having none of it.
Okay.
But as soon as she heard there was a pan,
she's very Shaw friendly in general.
Yeah. But as soon as she heard there was a panda, she was well in there.
Okay.
Yeah. She didn't enjoy it very much.
Oh no?
No.
What was her problem with it then?
Well, no, I don't think she had a particular problem with it. I just think it was. I think I think she was looking for something a bit more kawaii, you know.
Oh, okay.
You know, something
you
a
little,
bigger eyes.
On the sofa going bum hole with your through the whole film.
Well, she's kind of tuned that out over the years, so I don't think that was a factor. Shall I do another one? No.
On then.
No. I'll save it till the end.
Okay, perfect.
Extra long special one. We can all join in.
Yeah, there is a part where a banjo playing pig sings that I eat and I sleep and I sleep and I eat.
Sounds like a good plan.
It does sound,
interesting.
Nice way to live.
Considering the level of the animation, so I'm guessing it must have been a kind of a stylistic abstract choice rather than they couldn't do it. Interesting that they didn't add any strings to the banjo. He's playing stringless banjo, isn't he? I'm sure they could have done the strings, but so seems as if we might be struggling with much to say. I mean, I think more than anything else, we want.
I will say again
that it
is interesting. Yes, and it's also interesting again that they don't, for a kids movie, they don't shy away near the end. So there is a part where, again, we do have our monk, and he's still kind of an intolerant, git. And then that scene, and we get him hanging off the pagoda again. So that this is the third version of that scene. So that must be integral to the original version of the story because it shows up again and again and again. But anyway, this whole bit at the end where like he runs out to grab her and she's kind of become spirit form, and he then falls off the cliff and dies on the beach.
Yeah.
Which I was like, whoa, okay. Even
easy.
in the kids version.
Yeah, because she basically accidentally causes his death, doesn't she? So she's like, oh, well, I've lost all my powers now, and also I'm kind of dead. So I'm going to just appear as a ghost to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And then he just runs off the cliff trying to embrace her. Yeah.
To give her a hug, yeah.
The other bit that I liked in this was the kind of out there fantasy or out there even sci-fi. So
what the hell happens at the end where she goes into that red dwarf or Mars or whatever?
So instead of going to heaven to get the magic mushroom or the magic grass or whatever it is, she flies off into, and in the subtitles anyway, infinite space. Right? And she's flying through all these galaxies and all this like starscape.
It's totally psychedelic cosmic.
Oh yeah. Stuff. Yeah, but it's 1958.
Yeah.
You might expect that 10 years later.
Yep.
But and she just flies into the heart of this red dwarf star and meets this kind of fiery dragon.
Yeah.
That gives up her powers. Because that's the other thing in this as well, isn't it? Is that in the previous films and in most of the other films, it's like, oh, well, I promise I'll give up my powers just to save him. And it kind of never happens. But in this one, it happens, and she becomes a mortal person, doesn't she? So that was interesting.
Yeah,
and also,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and also the monk reforms at the end of it. So it's almost like the arc isn't actually about Whitesnake and Chow.
Yes.
It's about the monk, and the monk is actually the one who realizes, oh, actually they're in love, so I'm just going to help them.
Yes.
And he does stuff to help them at the end.
Yeah, he has a really. I wrote it down. Like, the monk has a really nice. Maybe I'm the asshole moment.
Mm.
And then yes, does and although it does seem like he's okay with it partly because, well, she is immortal now, and like his big issue was this whole border crossing miscegenation, whatever this was, spirit world, human world thing, and now he's like, well, you've taken care of that, so it's all okay.
Yeah. What I didn't like, the one thing I didn't like, which is to do with the end of this, is they leave the animals behind. So, I wasn't particularly attached to the animal sidekicks, but I felt a bit bad for them that, because there's this long stretch in the middle of the film as well, where the animals are basically abandoned because he's been exiled. And they take forever to like find him and come back to this town that he's been exiled to. And, there are scenes of them weeping as he's taken away into their exile. And then at the end of the film, they're kind of barred from getting on this boat that the two of them, the White Snake and Xiao go off on. They said, oh yeah, no, there's no place for animals on that boat. You have to, let them go and live their married life.
Where they're shipped off to the glue factory. It's very upsetting.
Yes.
The Knacker's yard cut.
Yeah.
Yes, that was the one made by the Richard Adams version, right? After Plague Dogs, and he had his go at White Snake.
Yeah, and there is a reasonable amount of edge in this. Actually, I'm not going to say. Actually, it's not really edgy, but there's kind of the middle section as well where you've got Xiao going through this kind of really horrible kind of existence in exile. I mean, where it's his job to just like pull a boat along a river by a rope, and then he puts his hand out for his pay. He gets paid, and then he gets bullied out of all the money that he earns from this meager existence of his, and then he just sits on the shoreline or on the pier, just miserable, until the animals find him and cheer him up.
Yeah, it's not saccharine in the way that like Saturday morning cartoons are saccharine and have all the edges burnished off of them. Like, I think it's there's enough a tiny bit of grit in there, which is good.
But there's a lot of fluff as well, with all like the animal gang, the animal farm that's not Animal Farm, but where PANDA kicks the shit out of the big bully pig.
Yes.
And the duck is trying to steal pumpkins and
that whatever, that goose and ferret were real sketchy. Like they were animated well in terms of looking like, who couldn't imagine a goose looking that dodgy. But fair play.
Laurie and Sydney Greenstreet of
exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, I think definitely worth mentioning and bringing up, and probably actually, if we were looking at this through a different lens, which in fact I know the good folks over at Podcast on Fire took a look at this film, but they were looking at it more in terms of history of anime, right? And I think if you were to put that weight on it, then it's even more important then, right?
Yes, yeah.
And no doubt it was a massive hit when it was new as well. And so let us jump forward a couple of years to Korea. And we're talking Madame Whitesnake, or Baek Sabuin, which is a black and white take on Madame Whitesnake, as directed by Shin Sang-ok, a very prolific, important South Korean filmmaker, who is, of course, nowadays most famous for being that bloke who was kidnapped to North Korea to make Pulgasari and all those other films.
I hadn't made that connection. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, then even that aside, though, I mean, you keep coming up you know, fight against his films again and again. If you start looking at older Korean films, like he seems to have turned his hand to almost every genre, right? Even remade this as well in 1968, I think, as a film called what's it called? Sanyo or Snake Woman. I had a look about it. I couldn't find any copies of it. So I have a theory about this one. So so this comes between Shaw 56 and Shaw 62. And it's very much a retelling of 56, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's almost a remake, but
minus a lot of the effects stuff.
Yeah, well, it seems
some of the nuances changed too.
Yeah, but it seems a lot more kind of dour as well. You know, it seems a lot more kind of downbeat.
Right, but I have
For me,
my theory about this one is, even though the 56 one was officially, well, at least semi a Shaw film, I'm guessing because it was all Japanese cast and Japanese language, even though they could have dubbed it. My guess is that film probably wasn't welcome in Korea, where Japanese media was banned up until, you know, like the late 90s or something, right? I think there were a lot of films that were hits in Japan that ended up kind of getting unofficial remakes or rip-offs for the Korean market because they weren't allowed to see but obviously they were like, oh, you know, they were like the IP is hot. So I'm guessing Madam Whitesnake 1960 got made just because they couldn't show 56, is my theory anyway.
Yep, it sounds definitely reasonable.
So in this one, the pharmacist is played by Shin Seong-il. The White Snake is Choi Eun-hee, and I think it's Ok Gyung-hui is Green Snake, and the meddling monk is played by Ji Bang-yeol. And yeah, I mean, I think this one maybe is almost the most sympathetic to our protagonists. Like, there isn't that much in the way of like, they get cut a lot of slack by the Goddess of Mercy monk character, and they're like given just enough rope to hang themselves, which they do again and again and again, but still at the end they're like, oh, leave them be, you know. So this seems to be a very, very, I know what you mean, Darren, in terms of it's a lot more kind of low key and less fantastical and not histrionic or anything. But it is also overall seems to be just the most sympathetic and nicest to its protagonists.
Yeah, well, I suppose as well, it's kind of more grounded as well. So it's because of the lack of special effects, it's much more kind of earthly. You know, it's much more human drama as opposed to celestial drama.
Right.
Although obviously there are fantasy elements.
And it's quite good. I mean, considering I'd already seen a few versions of this by now, surprisingly, it wasn't a chore to sit through it again. Do you know what I mean? Even though this time, I think this was the first one of this batch that I watched, which probably helped. And I hadn't seen the ones that I'd seen before for a while. I suspect that maybe had I just watched 56, 62 and then sat down to watch this one, I might have found it slightly more difficult to get on with, just because it doesn't add any exciting new fireworks or anything. But I think if you're going to take it in isolation and also maybe take on board my theory, which might or might not be wrong, you know, it kind of makes sense for this version to exist. Do you know what I mean? And it's worth, you know, it justifies its existence. Let's put it that way. And I quite enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting.
Correct,
sorry. Yeah, there's some interesting sort of twists to the mythos as well. So instead of having this kind of battle, between the Taoist priest and the monk and White Snake trying to reveal her presence, that's made much kind of less of, and it seems to be more about the clock is ticking for White Snake, because when she goes and she goes and gets the herb from heaven, the bargain she makes, which is different to all the other films, the bargain she makes is she has to go to this cave on the 7th month, the 7th day, on the 7th moon, or whatever it is, and there she has to turn back into a snake. And
that's true. That's not in any of the other versions we watched.
No, and that's where a lot of the drama comes from, is that sort of time's running out, and then when time does run out and she doesn't turn up, then the heavenly hosts come after her and the deities come after her.
But they don't they're not vengeful. I feel as if the gods in all the other versions we've watched would have torn her a new asshole, right? But
for sure, yeah.
They don't. Or a new bum hole, I suppose.
Bum hole.
There we go.
That is still funny.
Well, I mean, it's as funny as it's gonna get. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. Okay, so I watched this one fourth, I think. So I watched them more or less the two Shaws than I did the animated film. So that basically, which we're talking about them. This is when I got to this, and so I will say, Clive, you're absolutely right. Even having done it in that order, I still thoroughly.
No, you're not allowed to. I told you.
Okay. No, I enjoy this more than I thought.
No.
At the very beginning, I was like, "Ooh, this looks like it does look a bit more like the Italian neo-realist take with this slightly grainy black and white and the kind of the lower, budget overall." But pretty quickly,
that bit at the beginning when he's got that stolen bicycle with him on the board.
Yeah,
that was a bit.
But there was another big change. This is the version, right, where the first meddling priest turns out to actually be, because he shows up in the village and he says, and again, we do have some sort of miasma, some sort of cloud that's causing illness, but they're not necessarily profiting from it, and she's not she hasn't caused it, right? But but he's blaming them anyway, and I like it where they all he gets the townspeople to go to the pharmacy and hurl rocks in there, like an enraged mob of look at Frankenstein, and but yeah, he turns out to be a snake himself.
Right. He's a black snake, isn't he?
He's he's not a priest at all or a monk at all. Yeah, he's a vengeful.
That wasn't in any of the other versions, I don't remember.
No,
is that in the legend? I don't know.
I don't think so. That may have been.
No, yes, it is.
Oh, it is.
So the legend is it's not a snake.
Is it a turtle or something?
It's there's some other kind of creature. It might even be the carp. I'm thinking if it's the carp from the other anime. So there's so White Snake either gets some sort of powers. White Snake and Green Snake either get some sort of powers or get the ability to turn into a human being. But another animal spirit who kind of knows them doesn't, and he doesn't inherit the same powers, and becomes resentful, and then turns into Farhan, the monk on the mountain. From memory.
No, I think you're right. Yeah.
Also, we should mention, if anyone's interested in taking a look, the good people at the KOFA, Korean Film Archive, KOFA, have put this up, and it's on their YouTube channel.
Oh, great.
So you can have a look at Madame White Snake, 1960.
Yeah, with a good set of subtitles as well.
Yeah.
There were
very good
gems to be had on the Korean Film Archive channel. I highly recommend it to all our viewers and listeners. Yeah.
Now this version brings back the sleazebag governor guy, which I think is also important because he's the sleaziest of this set. You know,
and again,
it
makes the drinking the alcohol makes more sense as well when that character is there.
Yeah, and he's got 9 wives already, and he wants to sire a child on Whitesnake. And then he goes full Bill Cosby because he's mixed up basically a sleeping draft in this wine. So it's not the Realgar, the other one.
It's sulfur, isn't it? Yeah.
Which is apparently going to knock her out, but he doesn't know that it's not going to knock her out. It's in fact going to turn her back into a snake, and then he gets bitten for his trouble, basically. But also, I was watching this one with Jen as well, and she, being a keen reader of fairy tales, I think she hadn't seen the first one, but as soon as they came out with the gold, she was like, "Oh, you never take fairy gold. Like fairies don't understand the value of gold, so there's always going to be a catch, or
it's always a stone or something, you know."
Yes, exactly. Like well, tanuki in Japanese thing as well, turning leaves and stuff, into money. But then I will say that this is the one that has the really chintzy effect at the end of, the canon is the Japanese name for her, right? That female Buddha kind of figure. When she just comes down in that, like, she looks like she's like an insert in a bad, like, 70s or 80s photograph,
it's just like an oval, isn't it?
It's like this oval shape comes down.
It's like the introduction to Sons and Daughters.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought. Life and love and happiness.
But this is also the one where, like, he really, like, again, like, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and I think that this version of our guy is my favorite, and I think it's the most heartfelt performance.
The main, yes, he's the one. Certainly compared to both 56 and 62, he's the one you don't, you're not thinking through the whole thing. Why him? Like, you kind of get why she.
Because he's a good looking man.
He's a good looking guy, and he seems to really care about her, and he seems to be quite quick to move past the whole thing. Once he's over the fact that she's not being honest about the fact that she is a snake, he's very quick to be, he's like, I don't care if you're a monster, I don't care if you're a white snake, you're better than most people. He says at one point, and then later on, I think she shouts at the venerable old man, the guy, love has no limits or boundaries, which brought me back to that scene in Wild Zero. There's a scene in Wild Zero, the film starring Guitar Wolf, where one of the main characters
the zombie film.
Yes, the zombie film. Yeah. Where one of the main characters has fallen in love with a young girl who turns out to be, a transgendered person, and has this moment where you think they're going to play it for this kind of crying game thing where he's a little bit thrown, and then the lead singer of Guitar Wolf, suddenly turns to him and yells, "Ace, love has no age, like sex or gender or will." He's some kind of ridiculous, intense rock and roll line, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah." And
I need to watch that film again. I don't remember any of this.
I'm guessing that at some point during that monologue, he shouts, "Rock and roll!"
Right? That's exactly what he says after he shouts, "Age, our love has no age,
he can't
gender,
go
or limits."
many sentences without shouting "rock and roll," right?
Yes.
God bless him.
But as I said, I'm saving this whole question maybe for the very end of this. But this one really was the one that started bringing it home to me. Oh yeah, this is kind of about this fear that some people have about getting into a relationship and then finding out something about somebody. But then if you love the person, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
Right.
This guy's smart enough. He's like, you're better than most people I know. Doesn't matter. And you're as tight as a fucking snake.
Right. Yeah, you're top-notch snake notch.
Yeah. Snake snatch. White snake snatch enchantress is the version I think we Yeah, tight white snake,
Hope
snatch
exists.
enchantress. There we go.
White snatch enchantress would be dodgy, wouldn't it, as a title?
Yeah, I think so.
White snatch enchantress. Yeah.
That sounds potentially problematic.
It's just it works as a, visually.
Yes.
Mm.
But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I really like this one. I really
Yeah,
liked
it's good.
I liked it. I liked it.
Yeah, I particularly like the bit at the end. So a lot of these. So the other theme that we haven't spoken about, that runs through a lot of these things from the inShawScope podcast to the other ones we're doing here, is this whole going off on a boat at the end.
Mm.
So in most versions of this, you get, a resolution where everything's okay, and Xiao and Whitesnake get a boat to go off on at the end. But it's kind of a little bit sort of inverted in this, where you've got I can't remember who it is actually. I think it's so it's Xiao on the boat at the end of this, and the boat's kind of speeding down the river, and she's running after him and kind of falling over, and and eventually something happens that is, so sorry, tell a lie. He's running after her, and she's on the boat, and then she jumps off the boat, and then he jumps off the bank into the river, and then they both die.
They both drown, yes.
Yeah. And then they wash up on the shore holding hands, don't they?
Yeah.
And then the deities come down and say, "Oh, look, they're in love. Let's give them a second chance." And then they're happily ever after.
It's they're very benevolent in this version, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There's no kind of punishment narrative,
which
really is
only
there?
makes sense. And it's interesting to me that, like, this is another thing that kind of comes through, is the intolerance of religious figures. And this goes back to really all the versions we see, right? And in more than one version, they're called out on, they're like, hang on, you're Buddhists. Aren't you supposed to be, mostly animated by love? And more than that you love all things, right? You're the vegetarians. You're supposed to love all animals. Like, why the hate on for the snake?
Well, isn't that actually mentioned in the anime, or did I get that wrong?
It is in the anime, and it is in the anime, and it's in at least one or two of the others where it directly comes up. This question of, like, doesn't seem very I don't know, caring.
Buddhist of you, yeah.
One last thing I'll say is there's this little effect that's done a few times that I think is kind of cool, because it's very simple, but they needed to obviously create the impression of looming rain clouds or storm clouds, and they've obviously just dropped ink into, like, a water suspension and had it kind of cloud up and filmed it, and then superimposed it into the sky. And every time they do it, it's an effective little trick, and I dug it.
So
shall we get on to?
We all seem to be in favor of the Korean one.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, thus far, I don't think we've fallen afoul of any of them, right? They all legitimately exist.
Yeah, there's something about all of them. I mean, the next one might be the exception.
Yes, well,
I think so. Until maybe quite near the end.
Slightly unfair, because so Snake Woman's Marriage, 1975, Taiwanese, directed by Sun Yang. This is the one that we're watching without the benefit of subtitles or a dub.
Right. That's also true.
I mean, we know the story pretty well by now.
Or
we wouldn't have been paying attention. And as far as I could tell, nothing massively different happens in terms of the basic narrative, right? So in this case, it's Judy Lee or Chia Ling as Whitesnake, Chang Pin as the fella, and is it Chang Chin? Is it? For some reason,
you're on your own on that one. I didn't make cast notes.
For some reason, my last letter doesn't look like a letter. So I'm
So there's the Chang Chin
There we go.
is on IMDb as the third.
Right. Yeah.
Right, so I assume that's she's Green Snake.
So I suppose what's interesting about this, well, there's a few things that are kind of quite interesting. One thing that separates this from the others is the snakes are these puppets on strings.
Yeah.
Yes, I did like that.
That's fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is fun.
Because they show up right in the opening credits.
Reptilicus style, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, because
they show up right in the opening.
Yeah.
Marionettes. Yeah.
And
I was
like,
worried
I
they
hope they're
weren't
going
going
to
to
be in the
return,
movie.
actually, but they do return with a vengeance.
There's
Yeah.
a good fight at the end, actually. There's a good snake. Yeah, snake business at the end.
I always like those puppets, and so that's one difference. The other thing as well, I suppose, even though the 62 Linda Lindai version did have that stylized kind of operatic, acrobatic, this actually has proper action, right? There's like a sword fight in heaven, which again is nothing special or amazing.
It's not very good.
No,
for 1975, really.
But it's worth noting that it's there. I suppose they were like, well, we've got Judy Lee, so why would we not, right? Because that would seem, that would seem like if you hired Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers and they didn't dance or something like that.
Yeah.
So yes, so and the other thing that was so we should mention, apparently this version, which is on YouTube as part of the Wu-Tang collection, does maybe have subtitles, but they've been cropped off and they only surface for a few seconds in one scene. And I think we all went, huh? And then it's gone again. So that's unfortunate, because clearly it's available with I don't know what happened there, what the source.
Yeah, there's a VHS somewhere with that on. With the subs
I mean,
on,
it'd probably be still a nightmare to read, and it might actually make more sense without them. But
yeah, I mean, I think generally with the subs and it being raw, I think we get it. But I did miss a lot at the end.
Yeah, there's a few.
The end was a bit of a fucking mystery to me. Yeah.
When it goes off the reservation, then you're wondering exactly what what the motivations are. And I suppose the other two things I wanted to mention, and I'll give you the floor. So one which I mentioned before on the other show is, it's very, very different when they lose the interior sets and go on location, right? It's a completely different.
I mean, there are budgetary constraints on this film.
Yeah.
You know, it's.
And whereas on
they've not had an easy job making a fantasy extravaganza to this film, have they?
No, I mean, it's interesting. There's always a bit of give and take. The film the two films I always think of as a good example of this are, so obviously there's something to be said about, let's take this outside, let's make this more, realistic. I mean, I'm not sure if they were exactly thinking in those highfalutin terms. It was probably more than, well, we don't have a backlot, so let's just go and film in that park over there. But for instance, there's the classic 50s version of the Ballad of Narayama, which just looks fucking amazing. And then I understand in the early 80s they go for the more gritty, realistic and there's a lot to be said for that, but I'd much rather be back in the art.
I want cloud. I want to be in the cloud landscape.
Yeah, there's certain stories that lend themselves better, right? To I think that Whitesnake has to, exist in some sort of artificial environment.
Well, it just needs to be not a field in fucking Taipei somewhere.
I can see Darren struggling. Try and think of another place in Taiwan which is in Taipei. And then, because I was doing the same thing along with you, I was thinking, where's another place? And I couldn't think of it either.
Yeah. No, but you know, if you're gonna go and travel to heaven, you know, have a bit of dry ice or something.
Right.
You know, but they don't. They it's just
Oh, they got some.
field
They got some
somewhere.
clear bin bags that are tied up into some sort of stalactite type things that are like the chintz. Yeah, the chintziness of this is almost beyond.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is that can be an advantage as long as there's there's that other Taiwanese film from must be around the same, or a little bit later. Is it called Deadly Snail versus the Kung Fu Killers or something like that? And that's super cheap, chintzy, and it's all bin bags but that film works because because it's another world. It's another world. It's like
but they haven't made the effort in this film.
No, it's just like a Kuchar Brothers short film or something, right? Where they've just somehow they've made it work in like but here it doesn't. And the other thing I was wondering about this one as well, I was wondering, is this some kind of compromised version or a recut or something they didn't? So this is also a musical, but the weird thing about this is no one actually sing. It's not diegetic, right? It's not people singing.
It's narrated, isn't it?
Yeah, it's songs heard over the top. But strangely, though, more than usually when that happens, then no one on screen is talking, right? There's whole parts of the film where conversations are going on between the people, and you can't hear someone's warbling over the top, and you don't know what they're talking about. That was very peculiar.
I thought that was very weird too.
And I'm wondering if that was just like salvage, like this film was just, well, that's the best. That's how they got it, saved it in post-production, you know, by the skin of their teeth. Okay, that's releasable. Fuck it, put it out.
Yeah.
Or if it was like originally different and they recut it, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the film doesn't look particularly well thought out. If I'm honest, it looks a bit like a quickie, you know.
It looks like it looks as if, and as far as I know, there wasn't. But I'm you know, if I could be corrected, it's almost as if there was like the same year or the same month, there was a more prestigious Hong Kong version coming out.
Yeah, it looks like cashing.
Yeah, he rushed
a rush job.
Yeah, but I don't think that was the case.
No, that is why. Not that I know of.
They just did it without the budget, and you don't need the budget because you know Korea didn't have the budget.
No,
you know, in 1960, but they played it accordingly.
Exactly.
You know, this tried to go a little bit high fantasy, and I think it fell a bit flat. You know, even with Judy Lee.
Yeah, I mean, again, Judy Lee. I mean, let us not forget. I mean, you know, it's a Judy Lee vehicle, right? So you think it would be, a little bit better than this, right? A little less.
But then, you know, maybe this is Judy Lee. You know, maybe this is you know, as we discussed on another podcast. You know, maybe this is, you know, Judy Lee doing her Heart of Dragon, you know, where Jackie and Samo get to win an Oscar. You know, this is Judy Lee saying to the producers, well, I want to do some acting. You know, I want to do a bit of acting. I don't really want to do Kung Fu all the time. You know, I want to show my dramatic chops off. And she's fine. Judy Lee does fine. But she's not Linda Lindai.
No.
You know, she's Judy Lee. And she's okay.
Right.
But you know, there's no golden horses being won for this.
No. But even if that wasn't the case, she would still be the least of the film's problems, right?
For sure, yeah.
And I don't think I mean, obviously, there's a certain latitude for us not understanding what's going on. Certainly, like you said, when it moves into its final act. But I don't feel massively. I'm quite. For instance, I will be quite comfortable when I sit down to write a review. I will you know, I will fess up and I will say I saw this without the benefit, but I still feel as if my or our judgment as well is valid just because we have seen all these other versions, and I don't think we're being fair to it.
Yeah.
No, it seemed broader to me as well, especially like, so it really, for me, it didn't come alive actually till the end when it got a bit more crazy, and when there were scenes that again maybe made reference to parts of the legend that we haven't seen dramatized much. But like, you know, our version of, you know, Su Xian or whatever, you know, in this where he's so gormless, like, and it just seemed like much more like he's tripping over his feet. There was much more kind of like stupid comedy in that, and then when the monks show up, like they're eye rolling, like you know, boggle-eyed, like just a lot more of that stuff that I find I can find tiresome.
There's a lot of just off the peg mid-70s kung fu comedy,
broad humor,
with that same music that you've heard a million, ding 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 ding, ding 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 ding.
Yeah, and actually, to be fair, this one is played for laughs a lot more than the other one. Any of the other ones are.
Yeah, which is also an odd choice. Like this, it's like you know, if you thought that Macbeth was good without jokes, wait until you see this National Lampoon's Macbeth. It's like, no, you don't have to do that, you know.
Yeah, wait till you see Macbeth with bumhole.
Mac Bumhole. Look at him there, his little face. How long has he been in till he could do that again?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. You know, a few minor changes that are surprising. This is the only version where the Brawley exchange is done the other way. This is the only one where
that's the film's innovation.
The girls give him the Brawley in this one. And then at the end we have the kid and that whole whatever's going on there where I did like the semaphore flags with the water. Like
that
Chinese
was good. Yeah. The
you know,
making the storm with the flags, that was good.
Yeah. That was cool. And the snakes, I mean the giant puppet snakes at the end with their venomous breath, you know, that was good. That was good.
That's definitely the highlight, isn't it? That's if you're gonna watch this version, it's for that, right?
Yeah. But it's a long time coming.
Yeah, you might want to
Yeah.
What is it, the last 15 minutes?
10 minutes probably.
Right.
And then she does get shrunk down again and put into the little, and there's that in this one, that little, it really looks like a little UFO with the pot thing, because it zips off into the air. But yeah, at the end of it, like the kid is left screaming for his mother, right? It's a weirdly dark ending for what's been a very kind of jouncy, flouncy version up until this point. Suddenly, you know, again, she's trapped, and then her kid is there crying in the rain or whatever the hell it is, screaming "Ma," and then smash cut to the end.
Yeah. But before that, you've got like Green Snake and Xiao, I think, get together, possibly.
Right.
And then they lock the kid up in a cage.
Yeah, I couldn't fathom what was happening there at all.
Yeah, and that's a good 10-minute sequence, you know, where there's a kid now, and it's 7 years later, or however much later it is, and the kid's going out in the forest and wailing for his mother, and then they lock him up in a cage. And then you have that ending that you described.
Yeah.
And I just didn't quite understand it. You know, there's no pagoda, you know, there's no kind of...
Also, a Taiwanese fantasy film, there's no piss jokes. So I'm wondering
if it
might be a cut version. I mean, that's you gotta have at least one ill-judged urination gag in a Taiwanese fantasy 70s and 80s, right? So yeah,
maybe they've just put that in for the Western audience, though, to be fair, because we did view this raw, and all the other Taiwanese piss jokes we've seen have been subtitled.
This is true. Yep. They could be entirely for
I
our
don't
benefit.
think they were putting piss jokes in their films for Western
The
audiences.
international cut, you know, like the home audience doesn't need to see that, but you know, but they know. Yeah.
Right.
They know Clive
No, it
just
sells abroad.
waited in for a piss joke.
So we've gone off the rails once again, but that's all right because now we're towards the end, so we can fly into oblivion. It's fine. We don't have to
Perfect.
drag ourselves back. Right. So there we go. And just in case that wasn't enough, white snake, green snake for any sane person, fear not. For not inShawScope will return with another, no less than another 4 white snake versions, right? So we'll be back in late 70s Taiwan. We'll be in 1993 Hong Kong. We'll be wanking with turn of the century Jade Lung. And
what makes you think we're not wanking with 1993 Green Snake, Clive?
I just take it as red. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You can get your little green snake out for that.
Yeah. So get your wipe clean screen. You know,
Yes.
cover your laptop in cling film for any splashes.
Yes.
We're coming at you.
Good advice there, Darren. I would say the keyboard as well. I mean, you don't want to get, you know, like when you drop some food and then that key sticks.
Sticky keys,
goes a bit crunchy.
That can also happen
That's
with the spunky stuff. I'm led to believe by a friend of mine who told me about it. So
all right, hang on. So maybe
here we go.
Perhaps I should regale us just for a moment. So
you can do regale us, yeah?
Oh, I am. Here I go again on my own, going down the only.
We're giving him a second chance.
No. I think it works just as well.
Go on, don't.
No,
because now
he's started recording now, so you need to finish.
Don't hold a grudge. You look bad. Everyone will think you're mean and horrible.
Is that what's going to happen? All right.
Clive was just coming to a crescendo until you abandoned it.
The inner whoever the fucking guy from Whitesnake is now to try to get back into that zone. You dick. Here I go again on my own. Oh, he's gonna fucking turn it off again, isn't he?
No.
Oh, he is.
I wouldn't.
I bet he is.
Look.
No.
Unless I'm using my cock.
He's gonna. Well, yes, which is entirely possible.
I'm not holding that up. We'll get banned from YouTube.
No. We're not turning this off until you do it properly.
Yeah, you're not getting out of it.
You know, where you're as long
I like
as
how we
long as
turn
you
this
like.
round and make out it's Nick's fault. It's good. It's like
yeah,
having your cake and eat it.
So please stop fucking it up and please do a good.
All right.
Just do a White Snake cover, please.
I'll give it my all. Here I go again on my own, going down the only road I've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone. But I'm gonna fuck a snake. Yeah, I'm gonna fuck a snake.
In the bum hole.
I think it was worth it.
We shall let the viewers decide.
Please send your responses on an SASE.
Yeah, make sure we stitch this back together with the other one.
Until next time. See ya.
Bye-bye.